Nemesio Rubén Oseguera Cervantes, July 17, 1966 to February 22, 2026, widely known by his alias El Mencho, was a Mexican drug lord who led the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, CJNG, one of the most powerful criminal organizations in the Western Hemisphere. Headquartered in the state of Jalisco, the CJNG grew under his command into a dominant force in global narcotics trafficking. At the time of his death, Oseguera Cervantes held the distinction of being Mexico's most wanted fugitive and ranked among the most sought-after criminals in the United States. The U.S. government had posted a reward of up to $15 million, while Mexican authorities offered MXN $300 million for information leading to his capture. Oseguera Cervantes faced charges spanning drug trafficking, participation in organized crime, and illegal weapons possession. Under his direction, the CJNG orchestrated sophisticated drug trafficking networks that spanned multiple continents. Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes entered the world on July 17, 1966 in Quilititlan, a remote rural hamlet in the municipality of Aguililla, deep in the state of Michoacán. His given first name was a matter of some confusion. Various records list it as either Rubén or Nemesio. According to certain accounts, he was born Rubén but later adopted the name Nemesio to honor his godfather. It was from Nemesio that his infamous alias El Mencho was derived. He also went by the Lord of the Roosters, a moniker reportedly inspired by his passion for cockfighting. Over the years, he accumulated numerous additional aliases: Nemesio, Rubén Oseguera Cervantes, Lorenzo Mendoza, and Nemesio Oseguera Ramos among them. As part of an enduring effort to evade identification, he was raised in grinding poverty. His family eked out a living cultivating avocados. He was one of 6 brothers. Juan, Miguel, Antonio, Maureen, and Abraham were his siblings. Formal education held little appeal or possibility for him. He abandoned school after the 5th grade to labor in the fields alongside his family. By the age of 14, he had already begun standing guard over marijuana plantations, his first foray into the criminal underworld. A few years later, seeking to escape the bleak prospects of rural Michoacán, the young man crossed illegally into the United States, settling in California during the 1980s. To shield himself from detection, he cycled through a rotating gallery of false identities: Ruben Avila, Jose Lopez Prieto, Miguel Valadez, Carlos Hernandez Mendoza, Roberto Salgado, and others. By 1986, Oseguera Cervantes had established himself in the San Francisco Bay Area. That year, at just 19, he was picked up by the San Francisco Police Department for possession of stolen property and carrying a loaded firearm. 2 months after this arrest, his first child was born. Border crossing records indicate that throughout the late 1980s, he moved back and forth across the U.S. Mexico border under various assumed names. Both the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration and Mexican investigators believe it was during this restless period that he was drawn into the methamphetamine trade in Redwood City, working alongside his future brother-in-law, Abigail Gonzalez Valencia, known as El Queenie. In 1989, he was arrested a second time in San Francisco, this time for narcotics sales. Authorities deported him to Mexico, but he promptly slipped back across the border and returned to San Francisco. Then, in September 1992, he was apprehended on federal drug charges in Sacramento, California. Court documents paint a vivid picture of the incident. El Mencho and his brother Abraham had gone to a San Francisco bar called the Imperial to execute a heroin transaction, 5 ounces in exchange for $9,500. Abraham handled the deal itself, while El Mencho served as lookout. Though only 26 and considerably younger than his brother, El Mencho possessed a sharp, instinctive wariness. He immediately sensed something was wrong. The bills the buyers handed over were stacked too neatly, too perfectly, not the loose, crumpled currency of a genuine street transaction. Through a wiretapped conversation, police later heard El Mencho urgently warning Abraham to never deal with those men again, convinced they were undercover officers. 3 weeks after the botched deal, both brothers were taken into custody. In court, El Mencho maintained his innocence. insisting he had played no part in the heroin exchange and accusing the undercover agents of fabricating his involvement. Prosecutors, however, argued that the brothers had operated as a team. Mencho found himself cornered by an agonizing calculation. If he fought the charges and lost, a likely outcome, his lawyers advised, Abraham, who already carried prior felony drug convictions, would almost certainly receive a life sentence. In an act that blended pragmatism with fraternal loyalty, Mencho chose to plead guilty. He was sentenced to 5 years and sent to the Big Spring Correctional Center in Texas, a federal facility housing a large population of undocumented immigrants. He served 3 years before being released on parole and deported to Mexico at the age of 30. Back on Mexican soil, he initially took an unlikely path, joining the municipal police forces in the Jalisco towns of Cabo Corrientes and Tematlan. This stint in law enforcement proved brief. Before long, he gravitated toward organized crime, becoming a full-time operative within the Mencho cartel. To cement his ties to the organization, he married Rosalinda Gonzalez Valencia, a sister of one of the cartel's clan leaders. It was within the Mencho cartel's ranks that the man once arrested for petty crimes in San Francisco would begin his transformation into one of the most feared drug lords in the Americas. Within the Mencho cartel, Oseguera Cervantes started at the bottom, serving on the personal security detail, effectively an assassination squad that protected the cartel's leader, Armando Valencia Cornelio, known as El Maradona. On August 12, 2003, Valencia Cornelio was arrested by Mexican authorities, leaving a dangerous power vacuum. Around the same time, the vicious paramilitary group Los Zetas, operating with the support of the Gulf Cartel, launched a violent offensive against the Mencho cartel's operations in Michoacán. The onslaught forced the Valencia family and their associates to flee westward into Jalisco. Mencho resettled in Guadalajara, the state capital, alongside his father-in-law José Luis González Valencia, known as El Quinny, and associate Roman Caballero Valencia. In their new territory, Mencho and the remnants of the Mencho cartel forged a strategic alliance with the Sinaloa cartel faction controlled by Ignacio Nacho Coronel, himself a senior lieutenant and close ally of the legendary Joaquin El Chapo Guzman. Operating under Coronel's umbrella, Mencho and his group managed the Sinaloa cartel's drug operations, financial networks, and enforcement activities across Colima and Jalisco. Then, in rapid succession, the pillars of this arrangement collapsed. On October 28, 2009, the Mencho cartel's top remaining leader, Oscar Orlando Nava Valencia, El Lobo, was captured. On May 6, 2010, his brother Juan Carlos, El Tigre, was arrested as well. Just 2 months later, Ignacio Coronel was killed in a firefight with the Mexican army. With its leaders eliminated one after another, the Mencho cartel began to fracture, and Mencho moved decisively to seize control of the splintering organization. A succession struggle erupted. One faction favored installing El Pidio Mojaro Ramirez, El Pilo, a lieutenant who had worked closely with the Nava Valencia brothers, as the new leader. On the opposing side, clan member Eric Valencia Salazar threw his support behind Mencho. The tension escalated when Mencho demanded that the rival faction surrender Gerardo Mendoza, known variously as Tecado or Cochi, to answer for the murder of several men who had operated under Mencho's authority in Tecaman, Colima. When the demand was refused, diplomacy gave way to war. The Mencho cartel fractured into 2 warring camps. One called itself La Resistencia, the resistance. The other, led by Mencho, took the name Los Matazetas, the Zeta Killers. La Resistencia accused Los Matazetas of having betrayed Oscar Orlando Nava Valencia to the authorities, a grave accusation in the cartel world. Open warfare erupted as the 2 factions fought savagely over drug trafficking corridors throughout Jalisco. Mencho proved himself not only a ruthless fighter, but a shrewd propagandist. His faction launched a calculated public relations campaign, releasing messages that denounced the extortion and violence perpetrated by rival gangs against ordinary citizens, business owners, and even government officials, positioning his group as a force of order against criminal chaos. Los Mata Zetas ultimately prevailed in the conflict, crushing La Resistencia and consolidating dominance over western Mexico. The victorious organization then rebranded itself with the name that would become synonymous with terror and power: the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, Cartel de Jalisco Nueva Generación, or CJNG. On February 22, 2026, a Mexican military operation in the mountain town of Tapalpa, Jalisco, conducted with the assistance of U.S. intelligence, closed in on the long-hunted fugitive. During the operation, Oseguera Cervantes sustained critical gunshot wounds. He died while being transported to Mexico City, bringing to an end one of the most intensive and prolonged manhunts in the history of both nations. Security forces had long suspected he was concealed somewhere in the rugged terrain spanning Jalisco, Michoacán, Nayarit, or Colima, protected by mercenaries with professional military training. His death did not bring peace. The CJNG responded with a ferocious wave of retaliatory violence. Road blockades materialized across multiple states. Vehicles were set ablaze, and armed clashes erupted that claimed the lives of at least 25 members of Mexico's National Guard. The convulsions of violence that followed his killing served as a final, grim testament to the empire El Mencho had built, and to the enduring power of the organization he left behind.